Hello and welcome to Reportage. This is Danish bin Nabi. To understand how India's largest minority, that are the Muslims, live in fear of being lynched on daily basis and the existential threat they are facing now in New India, Ziya Us Salam's new book, Being Muslim in Hindu India, published by Harper Collins, makes a must read. The book details about how Muslims are being deliberately targeted and punished for the things they have never committed. To discuss about these issues, I have with me Mr. Ziya. Let's listen into the author. Mr. Ziya, explain to the viewers. Indian Muslim constitute approximately 14.2% of the total population. And as per this population, as you mentioned in the book, there must be 74 member of parliaments, MPs in the parliament. Yet by 2022, there are no Muslim ministers in the government of India. Why is it so?
See, it's for one very simple reason. The ruling party at the center, Bharatiya Janata Party, their slogan for public consumption has been Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas. But obviously, there is a daylight between their slogan and their actions. When it comes to actions for the BJP and for the ruling party there at the center, is anybody but Muslim. Since 1947, as you rightly pointed out, is for the first time ever that there is not a single member of parliament in the ruling party. For the first time ever, there is no Muslim minister at the center. If this is not sending a signal to India's largest minority that you do not belong here, that we can do without you, that your contribution is not acknowledged or respected, then nothing is. Muslims are being virtually treated as second class citizens in India. And the unfortunate part is it's not limited only to the BJP. You see the opposition parties, when their leaders go on a campaign trail, how often do they use the word Muslim? They are shying away from using the word Muslim in public discourse, replacing it with the euphemistic minorities. Equally importantly, since 2015, there has been a spate of lynchings across north, central, and you can say parts of East India. How many times have we seen the opposition MPs or MLAs going to the house of the victims? Most
Mr.
of these
Zia,
victims have been Muslims.
Mr. Zia, I am coming to all these points one by one. Let's first take up the political parties. As you have rightly mentioned in your book, that no political party, including the Congress, talks about Muslims, especially when they are addressing people in election rallies. Is there a fear if they talk of Muslims, they will lose the Hindu vote?
Obviously, there is that palpable fear, though I would believe it is unfounded, but there is that definite fear, that feeling of trepidation among political parties, that if they speak up for Muslims or win justice for Muslims, they would be considered appeasing the minority community. And no political party would like to be seen doing it in today's times. The political discourse of the country is today governed by Hindutva. How close are you to Hindutva? How far removed are you from the Hindutva? And you don't see any political party today opposing the concept of Hindutva.
And and if we see the India alliance, again, as you have mentioned rightly in your book, that there is no Muslim face except politicians from Jammu and Kashmir, but no Muslim face from mainland India. Is this India alliance complete without representing the Muslims of India?
No, ultimately, when it will come to elections, they will have to have Muslim faces over there. But when the alliance was launched, as you observe, the Muslim faces were almost conspicuous by their absence. It seemed again the India alliance too was apprehensive of losing the majority vote if bearded men, skull cap wearing men were to be seen on a stage. And we saw this very clearly in the UP Vidhan Sabha elections last year. Samajwadi Party was banking on the support of Yadavs and Muslims as ever to come back to power. How many times did we see Muslim leaders alongside Akhilesh Yadav on a stage when he went on a campaign trail across the state? Hardly any. How many times did Akhilesh Yadav speak up for Azam Khan, who was in jail and who is the best known Muslim face of the Samajwadi Party? So when the parties are not ready to stand up for their own leaders simply because they are Muslims, the writing is there on the wall.
Then again, you have written about Owaisi. Asaduddin Owaisi seems to be the only politician who talks about Muslims. What's your take on Asaduddin Owaisi?
I guess my book doesn't talk on those lines, and as far as Owaisi is concerned, he has his immense following on social media, and he has probably been the best orator in parliament. But whether he has been able to convince the Muslim masses that he is the leader they were looking for, it remains to be seen.
One of the intriguing things you write in the book is that there are over 20 crore Muslims, making it the largest minority. But it is impossible for the BJP and the right wing brigade to get over these 20 crore. What you have used the word is the making largest minority invisible. What do you make of it? What do you mean basically about making largest minority invisible?
Hasn't the BJP succeeded in doing it perfectly fine over the last 9 years or so? It all began by Amit Shah saying that we are not giving tickets to Muslim leaders, not because we are against Muslims, but because their winning chances are significantly reduced in comparison to a Hindu leader or Hindu politician. After they had started denying tickets to Muslim leaders, then it came down to electoral rolls. And as it was found in Karnataka in 2018, every fourth Muslim found his name missing from the electoral rolls. So you have virtually disenfranchised 25% of the largest minority in the country, despite the fact that they would have voted in the past in various elections, be it the state assemblies or the parliament elections. Then you have this reconstitution of Lok Sabha and Vidhan Sabha constituencies, where often it is to the detriment of the Muslim community. There have been cases where seats have been reserved for scheduled castes, even if their percentage is just about 10% or 12% in a particular seat, and the Muslim population is 30%. So, how just is that, and how fair is that? Again, the Muslim community is at the receiving end of all these political changes, many of which have been going on much before 2014.
I was coming to this keeping Muslims out of the electoral process. How threatening is it for the liberal secular democracy of India?
It rebels against the idea of India to exclude any section of the society, not just Muslims, but any section of the society deserves fair representation in portals of power. Unfortunately, India is moving away from that, as we have seen in recent times.
In the book, you have mentioned about the Muslim emperors, Muslim kings, and you have there are few chapters on these emperors and the Muslim kings. Why are present day Muslim being deliberately targeted for the things they have absolutely no idea about and they are nowhere linked to these things like this you have described about Gauri, Muhammad Gauri and Somnath temple, the propaganda, the narrative that is being spun around the Muslims. Why are we being targeted for the things that have not been done by us, not even by our forefathers?
See, since simple history is being used as a weapon to settle political debates today. The people who are indulging in propaganda are not good students of history either. For them, it doesn't matter what they are propagating is based on sound facts or it is just based on heresy or even a myth. As long as history can be used to browbeat Muslims today and by turn unite the so called Hindu vote against Muslims, then the purpose of that particular propaganda is fulfilled. Now that we are talking of Muslim emperors of the past, we must remember that none of these people, except maybe with slight exception of Firoz Shah Tughlaq, ruled according to the tenets of Islam. They were Muslims by faith, yes, but all their alliances were for political expedience. At times, they fought against fellow Muslim rulers. At times, they fought against Hindu rulers. At times, they formed alliances with Hindu rulers. And we all know about the relationship of the Rajputs and the Mughals, how the Rajputs came to occupy important positions in Mughal army, and even Muslims in the army of Shivaji. So all those battles in medieval India were fought for political aggrandizement and not for propagation or spread of Islam.
You are saying and telling me something very important, that the temple desecrations, especially of the Somnath, and in the times of Aurangzeb in Banaras, these were all political things, nothing to
See,
do with the religion.
when you talk of Ghazni, Mahmud Ghazni, you must also understand, besides his very unfortunate and completely condemnable raids on the Somnath temple, he also attacked the kingdom of his own brother. So it's not that there was any particular cause for Mahmud Ghazni to attack the temple. It was just an accumulation of more and more riches. But the Banaras case was different because the Zamindars over there had gone against the Mughals. So Aurangzeb attacked them. Again, it was a political battle. So if any Hindu today feels that Aurangzeb was deliberately targeting temples, or any Muslim in his own stupidity believes that Aurangzeb was a soldier of Islam, I think both of them are wrong. Aurangzeb did give lots of land grants to temples,
We
as
will
any
we will
emperor
come to
has to.
Aurangzeb in a moment's time. But first, let
Okay.
me ask you something else. One of the interesting chapters in the book is about Razia Sultan. Even I wasn't aware of I was aware of her, but I haven't read anything on Razia Sultan. There isn't this interesting chapter on Razia Sultan, how she basically rose to power by rebelling against her own brother. Why is she being, and you write, and I quote you, that feminist groups, they completely have ignored her. Why is she being ignored now?
It's very simple. Again, the government of India has a slogan called Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao. But when it comes to highlighting the accomplishments of a Beti of Hindustan who happened to be a Muslim, why is there a rehearsed silence about it? When we talk of Jhansi Ki Rani in 1857, and rightly so, why don't we give equal credit to Begums of Awadh in Lucknow? And before that, Razia Sultan. Razia Sultan was a woman in 13th century and way ahead of her times. At that time, to be riding a horse, to be riding an elephant, not to observe parda, facial parda that was, and to be able to strike alliances independently on her own, showed that there was a woman of great merit, great wisdom, and lots of bravery. Unfortunately, she has been consigned to just a few pages of history textbooks, nothing much. She has not been given her due by the posterity. And this chapter here is an attempt to highlight what she stood for.
And for the feminist groups and for the other women groups, they must read
Yes,
about
today
Razia
when we talk of
Sultan.
so many women leaders across the country of different faiths, why do we ignore Razia Sultan? That is my question. Particularly
I
when we have a role model from our own pages of history, we should be highlighting something like that.
Before I move on to the Khilji, I must ask you something. You in the book you have again written that the Sangh Parivar, the right wing, the BJP, they want Muslims to forget their heroes, to brush them under the carpet. Ex- yes, explain this to the viewers.
See, it's very important. You see the changes being brought about to NCRT syllabus, CBSE syllabus through NCRT books by the government of India. Why is the role of medieval sultans and Mughals being underplayed? The idea is to tell the next generation that there is nothing significant which took place between the, say, 12th century and the 19th century in India, particularly in North India and Deccan, so to say. The idea is to ignore all the laudable achievements of Delhi Sultanate, followed by the Mughals. So you're basically talking of period 1206 to 1857, and the government doesn't want the next generation of students to know about their past. That is why you have a film called that Padmavat on Alauddin Khilji, where the focus is not on his administrative acumen. The focus is not on how he defended India from Mongol invaders, not once, but twice over. The focus is not on his economic reforms, how they laid the bedrock for modern Indian economy. The focus is not even on the fact that here was a completely secular Indian ruler who probably did not even know how to say his Friday prayers. Instead, the focus is on the name. As they say in that Hindi film, na, bas naam hi kafi hai. Just the name Alauddin Khalji is used to browbeat Muslims, and that fiction of his fascination for a princess is sold as a fact. Whereas Malik Muhammad Jaisi's poem also came 2 centuries after Alauddin Khalji breathed his last.
Sir, you have also written a chapter on the Khilji. बहुत अच्छा चैप्टर है वो खिलजी पे, जहां पे आपने उनके मार्केट रिफॉर्म्स के बारे में लिखा है. हाउ
इसीलिए
बेसिकली
अभी
दे
उसी
वे
का
द
जवाब दिया
सॉरी.
अभी मैंने आपको उसी का जवाब दिया ना इसका कि
जी.
हाउ the filmmakers prefer to concentrate on his alleged lust life. I won't even call love life. Instead of focusing on his market reforms, how he was a wise ruler, brave ruler who foiled Mongol invasions of India a couple of times, how his economic reforms laid the bedrock of modern Indian economy with the segregation of economy back in the 13th and 14th centuries. All those things are ignored. Even ignored is the fact that Alauddin Khilji probably didn't even know how to say his Friday prayers. Just the fact that he ruled by his own wisdom was sufficient for him to rule, and all this is sought to be brushed aside and not communicated to the next generation. The idea is to project him as a bloodthirsty tyrant so that no Muslim today or even a student of history of any religion gets to know the facts of medieval India.
Mr. Zia, point well taken. Now let's move to Akbar and Aurangzeb. Akbar first. You write, and I quote you write in the book about Akbar that two concepts of Akbar, first Sulh Kul and Deen-e Ilahi, were basically two precursors for the liberal and secular constitution which the founding fathers laid for India. But by Akbar, by all historic accounts, is considered to be a liberal emperor. But again, he is painted in the present day India as an tyrant, as a despot.
See, for many years before 2014, we Indians have lived with the idea of a good Muslim and a bad Muslim. So, in the years gone by, APJ Abdul Kalam was supposed to be a good Muslim and Aurangzeb was supposed to be a bad Muslim. A change has come about over the last 4 or 5 years, wherein we are being told there were no good Muslims. That is why Akbar is being projected in the new colors which he has been now. As we see, the name of Akbar has been removed from Ajmer Fort, and all his policies of Deen Ilahi, Sulekul, etc., are not being communicated the way they should be to the next generation. Again, the idea all along is that Indians were having a wonderful life. There was peace and progress everywhere, scientific progress, economic progress, and everything, until the Muslims came and ruined it all. And according to this ideology of we and they, there were no good Muslims. So Akbar, despite all his liberal ideology and Ibadat Khana, where people across religions could communicate is projected in a bad light today.
If we come to Aurangzeb now, you write in your book that Aurangzeb granted more lands and money for the construction of temples. Why is there such an obsession with Aurangzeb?
Aurangzeb has been, you can say, target of so many historians since the days of the British. So it's not new. The British needed to present a picture of a good Muslim and bad Muslim. So the good Muslim was Akbar, bad Muslim was Aurangzeb. Now both of them are bad Muslims. Today, when we talk of Gyanvapi Temple, Gyanvapi Masjid in Kashi Vishwanath Temple, we forget, yes, there was this demolition of the temple there, but who gave the land for the temple at the first place? We also forget who gave the land for Vrindavan temple and who renewed the land deed at that time. These are the
All,
questions which have to be.
all these lands were given by Aurangzeb, right?
No, Akbar and Aurangzeb both.
Okay.
Aurangzeb
Aurangzeb and
renewed.
Aurangzeb, both of them gave the land.
Akbar had given the land, and Aurangzeb renewed the land deed in Mathura, Vrindavan, that is.
So, but why this obsession with him?
I told you, no, that there has been this tendency for many, many decades, in fact, more than a century, to project a binary of Muslims, a good Muslim versus a bad Muslim. So, if Akbar was projected as a good Muslim, then Aurangzeb had to be a bad Muslim.
Mr. Ziya, now coming to the contemporary Muslims, the bulldozer has become a synonym with Muslims. Is it the use of the
It has
bulldozer
become a synonym of Muslim oppression.
oppression, right? Is it basically is the bulldozer a sign of showing Muslims their place?
Absolutely, you're spot on. I agree with you. See, the idea again is that by different chief ministers, say of Madhya Pradesh and Uttar Pradesh, and even for a little while in Delhi, that we do not care for the rule of law. We do not have to go for justice to any court. The chief minister or the local MLA or the ruling party in a particular state can decide things according to its own whims and fancies. And that is exactly what we have seen with bulldozer politics. There's no attempt to go to the Supreme Court or to the High Court and seek their permission before demolishing a property, as is the norm, rather as is the law. Here, the government got away with complete violation of the law, and the larger society stood back and applauded because the victims were mostly Muslims. And the idea was they are being shown their place. You
Point well
keep
taken,
quiet,
Mr.
you don't assert for your rights, then you're safe. But if you speak up and you want equal treatment before the law, you want equal rights as a citizen of India, then bulldozer is an available option for such people.
Point well taken, Mr. Zia. Another interesting thing you have mentioned in the book is about how during the CAA protest, the so-called Shahi Imam of Jama Masjid supported the CAA. And it was Chandrasekhar Azad from the ramparts of Jamia Masjid who again led the Muslims and there were protests. Has this so-called Shahi Imam of Jama Masjid failed the Indian Muslims?
I guess for many years, yes. The very term Shahi Imam is a misnomer in Islam. There's no concept of Shahi Imam in Islam. A person with good religious knowledge, good character, can be an Imam and lead the prayers. You don't have to be a royal Imam for it. This was a title given by Shah Jahan and is continued till 2023.
So he has failed the Indian Muslims.
Absolutely. And the good thing was these Shaheen Bagh protesters looked through him. They were ready to align their fate with Chandrasekhar Azad, show faith in the Constitution of India, rather than walk behind sectarian leaders.
Likewise, on 4th of April 1919, that Swami G that had come to the Jamia Masjid, who had led the protests, including all the Muslims and the Hindus, and again from the ramparts of Jama Masjid.
Yes, it's something very similar to that. And
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 very
all
and
of
very
not just from Jama
interesting too,
Masjid.
which many Indian Muslims don't know.
See, one very important thing about this is it is not just about the staircase of the Jama Masjid. It is symbolic, yes. But all the protests about Shaheen Bagh and against CAA, they always upheld the Constitution of India. They did not want special treatment as a Muslim. They wanted equal rights as a citizen of India, the rights guaranteed by Article 14 and other rights of the Constitution. They did not want any preferential treatment or any reservation or any such thing. The protesters, particularly the Shaheen Bagh protesters, had the Constitution copy in one hand and the Quran in the other. This was a stirring example, rather advertisement for Indian democracy. Unfortunately, the ruling government of the day failed to see it like that.
Mr. Zia, my last two questions. In the book, you have mentioned about the concept of jihad and how basically jihad must be within inner thoughts with the inner being. Then you write about this concept of jihad at the end of this chapter. You write that there can be Corona jihad, there can be love jihad, there can be UPSC jihad. But as far as the Muslims are concerned, they must concentrate on the aim, on the target. And if I have read the book correctly, that target, that aim, you write is for the education, is the education. Explain for the viewers what should the Muslims do to keep themselves focused on this education.
See, you talked of land jihad, Corona jihad, and other so called jihads. These are not jihads, these were the terms coined by our media to again instill a sense of fear in the majority community. Okay, now the Muslims are coming and they're going to grab your land. Muslims are here and they're going to spread COVID and so on. All that nonsense, unfortunately, has been perpetuated by a large section of Indian media. Talking of what is the way forward for Muslims, you're right, and I agree with you. In education lies salvation. A Muslim should understand two things very clearly in today's times. First is what the Quran tells us, Rabbi Zidni ilma. Oh Lord, increase me in knowledge. So pursue knowledge as your divine calling. And when we talk of knowledge, we don't talk of sacred knowledge or secular knowledge or profane knowledge. Any knowledge which is beneficial for humanity has to be pursued. So whether it is science or commerce or arts, Muslims should go headlong and pursue that. And our madrasas should not confine themselves to merely memorize, asking the students to memorize the Quran alone. They have to be taught the CBSE syllabus as well alongside, so that they grow up not just to be the so-called Hafiz Quran, but also responsible citizens of the country with their own place under the sun. That is
Mr.
the first thing. And second is, our constitution also gives us special rights as a minority to establish our own educational institutions. Unfortunately, that is a right which the Muslim community has failed to exercise at a number of places.
So, Mr. Zia, let me put it very plain, blank, and simple form. The only way forward for the Muslims is education, education, and education.
Absolutely.
Mr.
More
Zia,
education we have, more we'll be able to sidestep our divisive leaders, more we'll be able to counter the propaganda of the media and the government.
Mr. Zia, I am terribly running out of time and last 7 minutes left. Before I pose my last question, as we both are wearing red today, it's a birthday. Today is your birthday as well. Many congratulations and happy birthday. Now,
Thank you.
coming to my last question. In the book, you have detailed about the lynchings, be it Akhlaq, be
Yeah.
it Rajasthan lynchings, and the other lynchings. How difficult was it for you to keep the track of all these killings and of all these lynchings? How mentally was draining it for you to see all those videos, to meet the people? And how did your family, your children, your wife, your own mental health, how was the experience like?
See, for me, it's been quite some time that I've been following these cases. Right from the time Akhlaq was lynched in September 2015 to August this year. There have been a spate of lynchings across central India, Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, Haryana, Delhi, UP, Bihar, Jharkhand, etc. I've been keeping in touch with all those instances, and the most difficult part is not to know the statistics, but the human element behind it. When you speak to the surviving family members, the details they give you of the last moments of their near and dear ones with them, or the video recordings they got on WhatsApp from others. Like in the case of Alimuddin Ansari, his son got to know about his father's killing because some other guy sent him a casual WhatsApp message just to show him, okay, Muslims are being shown their place. Some Bajrang Dal guy had sent him that video. Initially, he didn't open it, and when he opened it, he was horrified because the man who was being killed in front of his eyes was his father. Similarly, I spoke to the family members of late Akhlaq, and all the details they gave about the injuries inflicted on him, how many ribs were broken, how knuckles were broken, and how difficult was it to even clothe the body for the final namaz and other rituals. It was emotionally draining, shattering in many ways, and it was very, very difficult to stay calm and to be reasonable and not emotional in reproducing those things for the reader in the book.
Mr. Zia, to be reasonable and not emotional. Let's end this intriguing discussion on this point, and let me once again hold your book so that it reach the maximum readers. And I hope that Muslims and every rightful thinking person reads this book in entirety. Thank you, Mr. Ziya Us Salam, for talking to me.
Thank you.
Please subscribe to our channel Reportage and press the bell icon to remain updated.